interview you're about to watch is with Paul Page, a former royal bodyguard. The revelations that he makes are absolutely shocking, disheartening, and basically, it breaks your heart to know that this is what some members of the royal family have done and allowed to happen. And I think it's time for us to correct things. And I for one, can't help and ask for more transparency from everybody because he was brave enough to come on. And for you to watch the entire video, I will leave the link because it's from Shaun and it's almost a 2-hour interview and it's just unbelievable. So please enjoy and let me know what you think, beautiful people.
2 years.
Don't
to
you
this.
go for Queen Elizabeth.
No, you've got to think.
Dare.
No, because you've got to think.
Heart by Andrew Lambie, I'm of the opinion that Prince Andrew did sleep with Virginia Giuffre, 100%.
I have to ask you something because I saw your interviews and a lot of times you were saying that, for example, you broke protocol or security breach or whatever by not including the name. So you really have no idea who was coming in or out, which is insane.
Exactly.
2 questions. What would have happened if one of these people had harmed the Queen or any like other people there? Because I assume that once they get in, they have free access to the rest of the place, number 1. And number 2, if you, as a police protection officer, had seen Andrew breaking the law, harming a girl, what would have been your reaction? Would you have been empowered to stop it or just
100%?
The other way?
Yeah, 100%. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, our role when we join the police is to protect the public, all right? And that's the first and foremost. If I'm an old school police officer, so my remit was protect ordinary decent people and terrorise the criminals, yeah? And so if we had seen Prince Andrew in any way, shape or form abusing or assaulting a female, then he would have been dealt with the same as any other scumbag doing that. Yeah, I know the emphasis is on, look, would we have done anything? But I personally, and I know my colleagues would have done. I'm not saying that there were not police officers in that unit that may well have turned a blind eye, because there were officers in there that were loyal, were 100% loyal to the royal family. And I've got officers that have called me out for speaking out online, you know, And I've said, how can you defend the indefensible? You was a police officer, you know, all this nonsense about you signed an NDA. Listen, that went out the window as soon as I saw Andrew bullying staff, you know, and terrorising people. And you know, no, sorry, we've got to call it for what it is. The man's a bully, he's a deviant, he's a liar. All of it's been proved, all right? And so that's the first point. Although I've dealt with the second point first, now I'm going to go to the first point second, right? So, yeah, as you said, and I just gave an example about officers letting in a female who was mentally, you know, unstable. That could have ended up in exactly what you said. Someone could have got harmed because of Andrew was such a bully. And this is what I have to emphasize to people, right? They said, you should have done this, you should have done that. We made complaints, but no one was going to go to the commander because they would have just said, look, get lost. Yeah. So we did make complaints, but no one, the Queen, he was the Queen's favourite. So, you know, who's going to go to the Queen and say, you need to reel him in? Because she'll say, really? Off you go. That's the problem you had. It was a very archaic system. They had three canteens, restaurants in the palace. This is it's like upstairs, downstairs. When you join the Royal Protection Command, right, your remit now is, oh, sorry, shush, with a moody 13-year-old daughter and 5 chihuahuas. So that was bound to go wrong.
No, I'm so glad it's you, not my dog this time.
They'll probably start yours off. I've lost my train of thought now. Where was I?
We're talking about damage. If somebody gets in the palace and then they have free access and something like that happens, like that mentally unstable lady.
Yeah. So basically, she got in, and then so that could have gone wrong for those officers. So at the end of the day, what we're saying is he's got us over a barrel. But that problem would have come back to the officers. But Andrew. I've said, I think I said it the other day, he's that type of man. He would ring up the commander, the Royal Protection Commander at home and verbally abuse him down the phone when we did something wrong. He didn't care who it was. You'll get a roasting. He would F and blind at you. It was, so he was a bully from the top down. So it wasn't just like PCs or officers on the ground. He would bully the hierarchy of the Royal Protection Command. So there was nowhere really for anyone to go. If you didn't like it, then go back to division. But it's a bubble. When you go in there, so this is my point before my dog started barking, you walk in there. So when I said to you, my priority is to protect the public, yeah? And prevent crime. When you go in through that doors into the Royal Protection Command, you're now going into a different world. Your remit now, and you will be told that, is to protect the Queen and the rest of the royal family. Your remit is not to be proactive in terms of looking for crime on the outside. You only deal with what is in this palace confines. Yeah, that is your loyalty now. So you're not loyal to the public as such in terms of you're not going to go out arresting people. Your focus is on protecting the royal family no matter what. Yeah. And I remember, I'll give you an example. I first went on the unit and I've just fresh off the street, nicking robbers, rapists, bad guys. And I've turned up to this unit. So I've still got a sort of bug in me to, being a police officer and proactive. And we were doing a armed mobile patrol around the palace and we spotted a car. And bear in mind, we're SO14 Royal Protection, and I spotted this car. And I put my blue lights on to stop him because he was acting suspiciously. It ended up in a chase, right, around Buckingham Gate, around the palace. He's gone for a set of red traffic lights and T-boned the car, smashed the car up. He tried to reverse into us before we had the chase. He tried to smash into our police car. Anyways, crashed the car. As he's fell out the car, a massive knife has fell out with him. We was about to draw our weapons, but luckily we managed to get to him and restrain him before he could reach the knife. Otherwise, we would have probably shot him. So it was a good arrest. He turned out he'd stolen the car. He burgled a woman's house in Northampton up north. He'd stolen the car. He was on drugs and he was wanted for various offences and he'd come down to London to rob somewhere, rob a shop or something. So the next night I'm on duty. The inspector calls me over and he says, Paul, he goes, if you want to do things like that, go back to division. Your remit is to protect the royal family, not to go and do things like that. So instead of a pat on the back, I got told, listen, if you do that again, you're off. Yeah. So that's the sort of.
So you are encouraged. You are encouraged not to protect the public. You literally are like private for the royal family. And
your priority is the royal family. They say, they say it publicly. Oh, well, if you see a crime committed, you can dive in. But privately, they're frowning. They're saying, don't do things like that.
I ask it because I'm here in Toronto right now, and I know that Andrew used to stay at a very nice hotel here, and there was an incident in 2013, September 2013, here in Toronto. I don't know if you're still with the Royal Police Protection Officers. No. And a lady, he was supposed to stay the whole weekend, but he ended up leaving earlier because there was an incident with a lady that was brought into the hotel that she had to be. She wasn't feeling well and she left around 2 a.m. and they took her out and it was hush hush and he ended up leaving earlier. But that was covered up. I was surprised that that's not out in the public domain and people are still scared to come out and talk about it. So in many ways, the police protection officers are covering up the crimes and they're not reporting this.
Yeah, a lot of it, as I said, the coast protection officers are in a rock and a hard place with Prince Andrew because they're with him all the time. And as I've said to you, that the way he is, that's a really crap detail to get looking after him. You're looking after a man-child at the end of the day, and so that's a pretty tough job. And look, did they break the rules? And look the other way? No, I don't believe they would have done if there was any sexual impropriety. They were professional officers, at the end of the day. But did other things happen? They've obviously driven women home they shouldn't have done and bits and pieces like that. Yeah, probably. As I said, listen, the royal household is a law unto itself. And, so I'll give you an example, actually. This is a good one. So in 2002, I think it was it the Royal Jubilee? I was there when they had the party at the palace and you had all the rock stars there. I think Brian May was playing the guitar on the top of the palace and all that. And they had all the musicians at the back of the palace. The Bee Gees were there, loads of top drawer people, and they cordoned off with all fencing the area where all the artists were within the palace. So us as police officers weren't able to get in there as such. We could patrol around, but the household told us just let them get on with it. Well, the amount of plumes of cannabis smoke coming from this tent, coming from this fenced off area was unreal. You know, we were getting high just smelling it. The amount, you know, it was so. We made complaints. We told to ignore it. And a comedian, I'm not going to say his name, but there was a British comedian, and he was very famous at the time. And he was asked to come in to do a bit. He was part of it. He was involved in the celebrations, but he had to have checks done on him. So when you come in, you have to pass your details over. It turned out that he was wanted on warrant for non-payment of fines, right? So he should technically have been arrested and taken to the local police station, and that's sorted out. But we were told by the household, don't do that, that's embarrassing. So he was quietly spoken to and told to go away and sort the matter out and come back, which is what he did.
Oh, wow.
So when we're talking about, you know, one rule for them and another rule for us, that was a sheer, you know, officers had to turn a blind eye for that, as well as the drugs. If that was out on the street, we'd be getting the big red key and putting the door in and finding where the drugs were, you know. But because we're in the palace confines, those sort of things we just have to let go. So yeah, you know, it was an unhealthy sort of place. Well, now when we look at it, you know, sexual impropriety by other senior members of the royal household. I'll give you a few examples. Don't know if you've heard them, but I'll tell you again. One of the Queen's senior advisors, we were on night duty at the front of the palace one night. He comes along drunk. He'd been out for the night. He comes up because I've just been assaulted and my briefcase has been kept in a club down the road, and you will go and get it. That's how he spoke to us like shit, pardon my French. You will go and get it. So we went, no, we won't. So obviously he was clearly worse for the wear for drink. Said, no, we won't be going anywhere. He goes, yes, you will, because I said, listen, we won't be going there, go home, sod off. So anyway, he kept making a nuisance of himself. So we called the inspector up, and the inspector came out and obviously recognised who he was, one of the Queen's personal advisors, and basically said to us, what had happened is he got himself into a lap dancing club off of Piccadilly somewhere, and he touched one of the waitresses inappropriately, and the bouncers had given him a slap and thrown him out, and rightly so, you know. And but what had happened is they'd thrown him out, but he didn't get his briefcase back. And what happened was the inspector said, well, the problem we've got is he's now telling me there's secret palace papers in this briefcase. So now once he said that, we're stuffed. Had to go and retrieve this briefcase from this club. And we spoke to the bouncers and said, like, what's happened? And they told us, like, he touched one of the waitresses, sexually assaulted her. So I said, well, do you want to make a complaint? He went, no, we get it all the time. Unfortunately, sad to say, he said, we'll get it all the time. So that could have been an issue there. So we retrieved the briefcase and took it back, and no more was said about it. So that's one incident. Another senior, and this, you know, he must have been in his late 40s, yeah, this fella. And so he's hanging around those sorts of clubs. He wasn't a youngster, you know, finding his feet in the world. He was meant to be someone as senior official, and he's doing that sort of stuff. The next one was a colonel, retired. I'm not going to mention him, but he was one of the Queen's, again, personal advisors, and he had his wife and they had 2.4 kids. You know, and he'd have the country pub. He had a grace and favour apartment at St James's Palace, where the King now lives. But he was one of the Queen's personal secretaries, again, advisors, and so he's got his wife and his kids over at St James's, and like I said, at the weekend they'll go down to their mansion and he'll go shooting and all the gentry stuff, colonel, this, that, and the others. But what we found out was, or what happened was, he was having an affair with a young staff member who was about 22, and he's got to be in his 50s, right? And it all come on top. The Queen found out, and she, as punishment, she held his knighthood back for a year, right? And so, you know, there has been other sexual impropriety within the. So when you think about it, you've got these type of sleazebags wrapped around the Queen, and then who's gonna say anything about Prince Andrew, because it's only going to go to them, you know. Yeah. So it's a strange place, and I've always said, you know, it's not normal life in there. It's a weird setup. It's a weird setup. People will never understand it. They will never understand it. It's a
rarefied environment. I have worked with royal households. I used to actually organize the security part. And I wanted to ask you about this on the security part, because one of my remits, one of my jobs I had, basically when royals had to go abroad from different households, not the British, we would vet things. We would vet people in advance. This is why, for example, that idiot Harry doesn't understand that he has to give notice in advance, because there's a lot of things that are in place. It's not he's just going to pitch up to the place, you know, especially abroad. you were given an interview and you were, when Andrew, for example, went to see Epstein in New York
Yeah.
after he had been convicted. And the same
Yeah.
thing for Fergie, because Fergie took the girls or the women, her daughters, to see them. I am surprised because I saw in that interview that you said that he would have been flagged, rightly so. And other members, for example, of other royal households that I work with would have never gone there. And the government themselves would have not allowed it to go there. But why was he allowed in spite of the fact that it was flagged? Where was the government holding the reins or saying, no, you can't do this? Because at the end of the day, the monarchy represents, it's an institution. So the current royals holding the titles are soiling basically the institution. Where was the government saying you can't do that?
No, 100% you're right. I mean, look, it would have been flagged up. The checks would have been done on Epstein's premises. Like I've said, I'll quickly go through it again. So we've got a foreign and domestic travel office within the Royal Protection Command. They deal, as you said, with any movements, both private and official engagements. Yeah, they will then obviously they will liaise with the local police forces in this country or abroad, wherever these roles are going, whether it's private, as I say, or official engagement. So they would have obviously had to give. He's a senior member of the royal household, so he's not going to fly off and disappear. No one's going to know where he is. So it's all, like you said, it's going to be processed and it's going to be looked at and it's threat assessed, right? So they would have, Andrew would have had to give the details of Epstein's premises and who he was going there with, and obviously the checks would have been done with their counterparts in the US, and it would have flagged up these premises in case it's Russian owned or Chinese owned or something like that, you know, like, and it could be a problem. And it comes back to a convicted felon, Epstein. So that information, if it was not already known by command, would now be in their possession. And then obviously the next conversation with Prince Andrew is this is not a good idea to be staying with a convicted felon. It could be a potential security risk, but obviously what they'll be looking at as well whilst over there, where the nearest hospital is, where the nearest police station is, and all those things. So it's a very detailed thing. So when it's moved, it's all organised. So that would be the main thing, is the security surrounding where he's staying. Yeah. So yeah, you're right, because I think the security services, I think in this Epstein madness, has got questions to answer. I mean, what did they know? When did they know it? You know, as you said, you said the government technically probably wouldn't have been aware of Andrew's visit at the time, but don't forget Peter Mandelson was at the heart of the government as well, and he was best friends with Epstein. Yeah. So he was another one caught with his pants down, literally, because obviously the emails exploded and he suddenly rolled out the woodwork, you know?
Just to make a break, because I'll forget. You said that the government would have not known, but wouldn't the security, this is one thing, wouldn't the police protection officers would have notified their superiors that Andrew was flying over, and the government, and then there's somebody in government must have known, because you have police protection officers funded by the taxpayers that are going over there, and they have to know. Somebody had to be informed, and they allowed this to happen. I mean, no,
you're 100% right. So I think obviously the British embassy in America, the consulate, would have been made aware that Prince Andrew's coming over for a trip. Now, what the thing is, the discussion would have been, so the checks would have come back, a report would have been compiled for this trip, and obviously they would have flagged up any threats, any issues that could potentially arise on this trip, right? Obviously, front and centre, Epstein, convicted felon, right? So that information being passed to the commander of Royal Protection and said, look, there's a problem here. And then there probably would have been a meeting with Prince Andrew, high-level meeting, and probably one of the members of the senior household potentially. And Andrew said, well, I'm going. He's overridden it. There's no other way around it. He's overridden it. Because if someone had told me he wasn't going, for example, if the Queen had known or whatever, she probably would have said, no, you're not going. Obviously, within the government, like you said, the embassy, the consulate would have known. Would they have got the report? Probably. Would they have made their obviously they've made it known what they thought? Yes. What did Andrew think? Didn't care. Hence why the visit happened. You know, it's again, we come back to, I went there to say goodbye to him, the honourable thing to do, right? Well, we now know that's a lie. He's gone over there because it's all coming on top, and he thinks he's going to be in the frame. Something he's done is might come to light, and he's gone over to Epstein to see, you know, what the actual score is and how deep he's in the pup. That's what he's done. You don't go to visit a convicted. You don't risk, you know, the kind of damage that he's caused in the position that he's in as a senior member of the royal for nothing. Yeah, it must have been a very, very serious conversation he needed to have with Epstein for him to risk the reputational damage that's happened on that visit with those photos. It's clear. And as we've seen now with the evidence that's coming to light, something very, very wrong has happened with Epstein in the relationship with Epstein. You know, what's gone on, we don't fully know yet, but whatever it is very serious indeed. So hopefully, you know, more will come out. But for that, as you said, there are going to be people in the government within the security service, I suggest, that would have known what's gone on. And there must have been reports, because he was trade envoy, UK trade envoy, A, and B, he was a senior member of the Royal household. So he could have been subject to blackmail, threats, kidnaps. So there must have been a constant stream of intelligence around him and not only his business activities, but his personal activities, to make sure that he's not getting himself involved with anyone who could compromise him and the state. Yeah. But then, unfortunately, what we've also got is the Chinese connection. You know, and that was flagged up far too late by the intelligence services. So what were they doing? You know, were they sitting on their hands? So I think that the intelligence services, MI5 and MI6, are going to have questions to answer. If it comes to a public inquiry, I'm pretty sure they're going to be in hot water as well.